Welcome back again. My name is Hyacinth and today we will continue discussing various forms of methodologies. Collaborative approach points to cooperation between the teacher and the student and stands against the competitive system followed in a traditional classroom. The communicative method, popular in the 1990s. The main tenet of this method is that it does not teach about language, but rather teaches language. Grammar is not touched at all and teachers practice the 3Ps, presentation, practice, and production. Comprehensible input. Students learn best when exposed to samples of the target language that are at or just above the student's current level of acquisition of the language. Teachers can ensure that the language used in the classroom is comprehensible by evaluating the students on the stages of language acquisition and can design activities that ensure input and output at an appropriate level for the student. Comprehension strategies. Students' comprehension of text is enhanced when teachers incorporate instruction that includes strategies such as prediction, self-questioning, monitoring, determining importance, and summarizing. These strategies were identified in what has come to be known as the proficient reader research, because proficient readers use them in all kinds of text. They can be taught. The more they are taught explicitly and practiced, the more likely students are to use them independently in their own reading. In their studies involving diverse readers, reading test scores can be elevated through explicit scaffolded instruction of these and other similar metacognitive strategies. Content area instruction, designed to provide second language learners instruction in content and language. Content used to refer to the methods of grammar translation, audiolingual methodology, and vocabulary or sound patterns in dialogue form. Recently, content is interpreted as the use of subject matter as a vehicle for second or foreign language teaching learning. Content-based instruction, learning about something rather than learning a language. Engage students in learning other subject matter, tasks, or in problem solving around other issues in their lives. A variety of activities that appeal to different preferences and intelligences for working with new information. Content-based learning. Content-based learning joins language learning with numerous amounts of content. Since students will learn to speak and write in English, they must learn English to be able to study, for example, history or science. They must learn English in order to study content from another subject. This forces students to learn vocabulary and improve their listening skills. This is where daily lesson plans come into effect. You can teach grammar 1 day, speaking 2 days, listening and vocabulary 1 day. You must give as much content to the students to make them the best students you possibly can. To make this easier to understand, again from the book ESL EFL. Teaching Principles for Success gives 9 rules to teach content, which are: use visuals and realia. Always try to move from the concrete to the abstract. Use gestures and body language. Speak clearly and pause often, but don't slow speech down unnaturally. Say the same thing in different ways, paraphrase. Write keywords and ideas down on the board. Use overheads and charts whenever appropriate. Make frequent comprehension checks. Have students explain main concepts to one another working in pairs or small groups. They can do this in their first languages. Keep oral presentations or reading assignments short. Collaborative activities are more effective than lectures or assigned readings. Cooperative learning. In cooperative classrooms, students find value in helping one another learn. They don't see educational goals as attainable by the few. For example, having only 3 A students per class. Rather, they see them as attainable by all, everyone accomplishing a set of goals. The classroom is organized so that the goals are most likely to be attained when students cooperate and collaborate. When the class works together toward a goal, they become a cohesive, powerful, and positive force. Research shows that using peers as collaborators, teachers, and tutors results in better academic achievement, ethnic relations, prosocial development, and attitudes toward school, learning, and self in multicultural classrooms. It also increases a sense of student ownership of the classroom environment and activities. In the cooperative classroom, language learning is enhanced by the use of peers as co-teachers and of language as a medium of communication rather than a separate subject. When small groups of students collaborate on a common task, they must clarify and negotiate meaning with one another, which results in complex language input, including low-level input, repetition of information. Cooperative learning is a type of collaborative learning that is more structured, targeted, and organized. In cooperative learning, students are formed into small groups that are tasked to achieve a certain set of goals or objectives. Each student assumes responsibility for his or her learning while being simultaneously involved in the group work. For cooperative learning to work, the groupings must be small enough in order to encourage strong participation of all members. In addition, the objectives must be clearly established and the working parameters well defined. When orchestrated properly, cooperative learning delivers many positive benefits such as active learner participation, mutual respect, appreciation for diversity, and teamwork. Like collaborative learning, cooperative learning may be applied to just about any learning objective provided that the teacher establishes the right atmosphere for group dynamics. It is also very appropriate for language learning since extensive mutual practice is possible. The direct approach method, because of the grammar translation method, did little way of teaching students how to speak and communicate with each other orally. The direct method was created in the late 1800s. Some teachers thought it would be easier to teach a student by the way a native speaker would learn, naturally. Students now could learn how to effectively communicate with each other orally and practiced speaking along with grammar lessons. However, students weren't immersed as deeply into the grammar rules as they were speaking. It was discovered that students could learn a language without having to learn complex grammar rules or knowing of Latin or ancient Greek. The teacher speaks in the target language and the students quickly learned the language. This method was quickly adopted by private schools in Europe. One of being the Berlitz School created by Charles Berlitz in Berlin, whose method is still sold today on tapes and compact discs. Because of budget restraints from public schools, the method went back to the grammar translation method because administrations thought the students weren't learning enough grammar during the lessons for the money being spent. Each school had to hire a native speaker of the language that proved to be too costly for the size of the classroom and the amount of classes that were taught daily. Some of the features of this method are that the class is held completely in the target language and an emphasis on vocabulary and phrases are taught at a higher level than grammar. Students will learn grammar using their own rules. Students learn pronunciation and speaking by practicing with role play, pair work, and using real-life situations. This is highly effective when you have a small group or dedicated students. Discovery-based learning, a student-centered instructional approach that is rooted in the constructivist theories of education. The underlying philosophy of this learning method is that the best way to learn is to learn by doing. In this method, the experimental and empirical approach to learning is given more premium than the teacher-centered model wherein all concepts and learning opportunities emanate from the actions initiated by the teacher. Discovery-based learning may be implemented for tasks that involve the detection of patterns, simulations, compliance with a set of instructions, problem-solving, and experiments. As discovery-based learning requires students to interact, manipulate, or experiment with objects, systems, and people in their surroundings, it is a very valuable instructional method in the teaching of technical subjects such as the natural sciences, engineering, and IT. Engaged learning is an instructional method wherein students are active participants in the design and management of their own learning. Like discovery-based learning, engaged learning is a student-centric approach, but in a more fundamental sense. Numerous researches agree on the critical importance of engaged learning in classrooms. In engaged learning, students are the most active stakeholders in the learning process. Within these learning parameters, students do extensive research, participate in discussions, and deliver various types of outputs based on their learning decisions. Teachers, on the other hand, are mere coaches or facilitators to the star players. In engaged learning, students should be self-disciplined because they assume responsibility for their own learning. They also become explorers and get involved in different aspects of their learning environment, just like students under a discovery-based learning approach. Hence, engaged learning is a perfect instructional technique for sharing the concepts of science and other technical subjects. This does not mean that it cannot be used in other subjects, however. Proponents of engaged learning believe that any subject can be taught using the principles of engaged learning. Form-focused instruction, FONF, an approach to language education in which learners are made aware of the grammatical form of language features that they are already able to use communicatively. It is primarily with the communicative approach and used with meaning, form, and pronunciation. 4. Intervention. The learner must be aware of the meaning and use of the language features before the form is brought to their attention. It was created by Michael Long in 1988. Grammar translation method. The grammar translation method was the premier method of teaching second language students until the 1940s. The grammar translation method is still used widely in classrooms in Europe, Asia, and the Americas. The most popular methodology when it comes to teaching grammar. It begins with the explanation of the rule that follows a syllabus and lesson plan. After a rule is explained, the class is given exercises where they can practice translating words and sentences into and out of the mother language. The teacher is authority figure and focuses on grammar, provides grammar rules for learners to apply. Original focus was on translation of classical languages such as Greek and Latin. Learners are to associate meaning directly with the target language while no translation and L1 is allowed. Learners must use spoken language in situations with no native language translation, and grammar is taught inductively, i.e., student discovers rules. A good example of the grammar translation method would be how the Rosetta Stone was translated. The stone was written in Greek and in two different versions of hieroglyphics. Ancient Greek is now considered a dead language because it is only used in literature. No one was able to translate the stone until two scholars, who had the knowledge of ancient Greek, took on the task of deciphering the stone. The scholars deciphered the ancient Greek text and noticed patterns in the hieroglyphics. They concluded that the hieroglyphics were saying the same things as the Greek. They broke the ancient Egyptian text from this stone, which gave us the insight into ancient Egyptian society. When a student learns Latin or ancient Greek, they use this form because the languages aren't spoken, but still can read ancient texts and literature. Latin can be used to help with vocabulary and understanding legal and medical terminology. The class is taught in the mother language and not the target language for the students to understand the grammar terms and rules easier. They learn rules that most native speakers don't understand, and they begin reading comprehension quicker, but don't learn the meaning of certain sentences. They only understand the grammar structure of a sentence, but sometimes not the meaning. Well, that is all the time we have for today. I hope to see you next time.